Hello and welcome to the first episode of Rust on the Run, where we will cover unit structs and how to use them in the Rust programming language. So what is a unit struct in Rust? In simple terms, it's just a struct without any fields, so it holds no data, and it's just a name and that's it, pretty much. So, for example, in this code here, I have first, in line 2, I have declared a regular struct, which has one data field, which is a number. And then in line 6, there is a declaration of a unit struct. As you can see, there are empty curly brackets here, so it has no fields, no data. And in fact, we can just do away with the curly brackets completely and just put a semicolon here, and compiler will be perfectly fine with this. This is a valid declaration of a unit struct. Similarly, when I instantiate a regular struct, like in line 9 here, I have to provide values for its fields. In case of a unit struct, of course, there are no fields. So I can put empty curly brackets here, or better yet, just put a semicolon. Again, the compiler is perfectly aware of the fact that this is a unit struct because of this declaration here. Therefore, putting only the name here is just fine. So what is the purpose of unit structs in Rust? In general, it's good to remember that they can be useful whenever we need to mark the existence of something, and we don't really need any additional data or information about that something, which either exists or not. Okay, if this sounds a little bit confusing, don't worry, I will just in a second give you 3 examples of using unit structs in Rust, and it should really make it clear. So the first example here is this enum here called bearish, because I like bears and I like bearish things. And we have 3 variants here, and each of those variants is actually a struct. In reality, whenever you declare a variant in an enum which has no data associated with this, like in the case of teddy bear and koala bear here, those are just unit structs, and this is like the most common way that we are using unit structs in Rust, sometimes without even knowing. Of course, lot of bears is actually also a struct. It's a tuple. In this case, with just one member. It could be any other kind of struct. We could add more variants here, of course. I think this is pretty straightforward and easy to understand. And in the rest of the code, we just print out some debug info about this, and we just run this, so we can see if we get what we expected. And I guess this is precisely what we would expect the output to be given the code here. Another example of using unit structs is for implementing traits. So sometimes we need to implement some trait, but that trait does not require us to provide any data for it to be implemented. And this is one example. So here we have a trait called area calculator, which requires us to implement one method, calc area, which calculates the area for whatever this trait is implemented for. So in the first case here, we have a square, a struct representing a square, and so in order to calculate the area, we need to provide the size of the square. So in this case, this is just the required field. And we just square it here and we return the result, and this is how this is done for the square. Notice that this is just a regular, very simple structure here. When we are dealing with the point, for example, now we know that we don't need to really calculate the area, it's always 0. So we just define it as a unit struct, and then we define the calc area method just as simply returning null point null. And Obviously, I will just run this code. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. Here we expect the area to be the square of 2.5, which is 6.25, I think. And here, obviously, the area will be 0. And we get exactly what we expected. And for the final example, we will use a unit struct to signal the existence of a certain condition. It could actually be also a value which we detect, for example, in a stream or in a vector. But in this case, we'll use it for error handling, which is a pretty basic and common usage case in Rust. So here we have a function which just divides two numbers, two floats. And obviously we don't want the denominator to be 0 because then the code would panic. And so we want to catch the situation. And to do this, we just define our unit struct divide by 0 and then use it to as part of the result type to return the error if it occurs. So the function is pretty straightforward. We just test if the denominator is not 0. If it's not, we just return the OK value, and if it is, we return the error. So this code I think is pretty easy and self-explanatory. Just to make sure that it works, here in the main we just print out the result of the division in one case where there is just a regular division with no problems, and in the other case when we try to divide by 0. So I will just run it and we'll see if we get the expected result. And as you can see, we get a valid result in the first case and then we get the error in the second case. So that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, comment and or subscribe if you want to. And I hope to see you in another video soon.